Imagine if you have the ability to read people's minds, and it turns out that the tsundere girl in your classroom has a huge crush on you. That's the power that the protagonist Kota unexpectedly developed one day, and here's how it all happened. It all began a few days ago. As usual, Kota is on his way to school, riding the subway with his friend Mizuki. Mizuki has an unusually cute face that confuses Kota's teenage feelings sometimes, but Kota pushes him away, reminding himself that this isn't a BL manga. But the train suddenly sways, putting Mizuki off balance and stumbling towards Kota. But I swear to God this isn't a BL manga, so back the off, Mizuki. Fortunately, the two safely make it to class without any further incident. Soon, their teacher enters the classroom, initiating the day as usual by trashing Kota's appearance in front of the entire class. Moving on, she introduces a new student in class, a girl named Ayano, who happens to be Kota's childhood friend. Surprised, Kota abruptly stands up from her unexpected appearance. He remains tensed up and frozen, inadvertently blocking Ayano's way to her desk. Tension hangs in the air as the two stand quietly face to face. The other students begin whispering to each other, wondering if the two are about to throw some fists. Breaking the silence, Kota greets his old friend, but Ayano responds with an irritated expression, telling him to move out of her way. Kota is stunned by her unexpected demeanor and wonders if he's misheard her. However, Ayano leaves no room for misinterpretation, repeating her words in an even angrier tone. At lunchtime, Mizuki asks Kota what happened between him and Ayano. Kota explains that he's wronged her when the two were in elementary school, but he never had the chance to apologize, as Ayano and her family abruptly moved to another school shortly after the incident. Meanwhile, Ayano shoots a death glare in Kota's direction from across the cafeteria, clearly harboring anger over the past. Unexpectedly, she stands up and, while passing by Kota, accidentally trips over her own foot. Kota's Japanese spidey senses kick in and heroically rescues Ayano from her fall. He asks if she's all right, ready to respond to her heartfelt thanks by claiming that with great power comes great responsibility. However, she snatches her hand away and gives off a dirty look before walking away again, showing no appreciation for Spider-Man. But the truth is not as it seems. After her encounter with Kota in the cafeteria, Ayano springs to the school rooftop, the magical place where all pivotal moments unfold in Japanese shows. Ayano squeezes her little diary tightly to her chest while her cheeks flush. Wink. It starts raining after school. Kota stands at the crosswalk waiting to cross, when suddenly, a kitty crosses the road just as a truck roars down the road. Kota's Japanese spidey senses kick in once more, and with a graceful somersault, he intercepts the kitty midair and lands safely on the other side of the road. The grateful kitty purrs and meows, which apparently means, "Thank you for saving my life." Then, for some reason, Kota begins following the kitty, who leads him through the neighborhood until they reach a place called Kagura Cat Shrine. Kota ascends the weathered staircase until he suddenly hears a woman's voice ahead of him. This is where all you furries are going to get excited, because when Kota reaches the top of the stairs, a zesty-looking cat girl greets him with a foxy look on her face. With a snap of her fingers, she halts the rain. But that demonstration of her powers alone isn't satisfactory, so the cat girl hurls Kota through the air and into her abode. Catwalking towards him, she introduces herself as the god of Tianjin Cat Princess. But Catgirl is easier, so let's just stick with Catgirl. Anyway, she offers to grant Kota a reward for saving the kitty. Anything he wants, she claims she can make it happen. Gazing deeply into his eyes, the Catgirl recognizes Kota's most heartfelt wish is to apologize to Ayano, because who cares about world hunger or curing cancer, right? So the Catgirl digs through her cabinet and finds a dusty old candy. She claims the candy will grant him the ability to hear the thoughts of the girls he encounters. With this amazing power, he can finally apologize to Ayano, because that's what matters most in the world to Kota. Then, the Catgirl leaves him with a manual instruction for the candy and excuses herself to do cat things outside. Kota gets lost deeply in thought about the moral implications of peering into someone else's mind without consent. After a brief moment, The cat girl dashes back inside to remind Kota that he can totally save the countless lives of children from infectious diseases for his wish. But it's too late. He's already sucking every drop of the juicy powers from the Infinity Stone in his ever-consuming thirst for power. The cat girl panics, thinking about the missed opportunity to help all those people with Alzheimer's who could have regained their lives. Anyways, she admits her mistake and drops a mammoth book on the floor, revealing it as the actual instruction manual. It outlines the candy's side effects, which include the user's death upon receiving a confession of love. While that might not be a concern for you guys, it's devastating news for our protagonist Kota. Additionally, Kota's newfound power will last until he graduates, with the caveat that he can't transfer schools or drop out. Otherwise, the manga's main plot will be resolved in Chapter 2. Lastly, Kota will also die if anyone else discovers his ability. Kota experiences a sharp pang in his head, but the cat girl reassures him that he'll be fine, despite practically ruining his life. The next morning, Kota awakens to his little sister's touch. Clearly, this manga is a buffet, and the author is trying to please everyone's preferences. Anyways, Kota gets out of bed and asks his sister Yuna to stay still for a second. He gazes deeply into her eyes, trying to see if his supposed powers can reveal her inner thoughts. However, there is nothing but an awkward silence, followed by Yuna calling him a creep. On his way to school, just as Kota wonders why he wasn't able to hear his sister's thoughts, he begins hearing the voices of girls around him. Though their mouths are shut, he hears their thoughts as if they were speaking aloud. Just then, amidst the voices, Kota hears his name being spoken. He turns around to see Ayano. Outwardly, she still treats him like trash, but this time, he's able to hear her inner thoughts, which reveals that she's in fact a total simp over him. At first, Kota gets relieved in knowing that she isn't angry with him. However, his happiness quickly subdues as he recalls the side effect of his newfound power, that he'll die upon hearing a confession. Finally, we get a flashback of Kota's memories, revealing what happened between him and Ayano in elementary school. Back then, Ayano used to write short stories, receiving compliments from all her classmates. But Kota never complimented her. In fact, he straight up told her that he found her writing uninteresting, which made little Ayano burst into tears while claiming that it was only Kota who understood her. With those mysterious words, she ran away to thicken the manga's plot. That was one of their last interactions, until their recent reunion at school. Returning to the present moment, Kota finds himself bewildered by how Ayano had come to develop feelings for him. Fearing that Ayano might actually confess her feelings, Kota decides to seek advice from the cat girl once more. At first, the cat girl is in disbelief over his predicament. Kota begs for her assistance in removing the mind-reading power he's been given. But despite his persistent pleas, the cat girl maintains that there's no other way out, and there's nothing she can do. All he needs to do is wait until his graduation, at which point he'll be liberated from his cursed powers. Kota finally concedes to his fate and poses one last question to the cat girl. He inquires if he'll really die upon hearing a confession. In a somber tone, the cat girl begins elucidating how death is a mere ontological concept, and that we ought not to fear death, as when we exist, death is not yet present, and when death is present, we do not exist. In other words, yes, we're all going to die. After his lackluster conversation with the cat girl, Kota returns home to the sound of someone cooking in the kitchen. He enters the kitchen, assuming it's his younger sister, but it turns out to be Ayano, Uncle Rogering the out of the steak in a wok pan. Kota's sister Yuna appears at the scene and reveals that she invited Ayano so they can all catch up. Ayano's face appears emotionless, but it's all too evident to the all-knowing Kota that Ayano's got some filthy things to say in her thought bubble. Outwardly, she tries to feign her indifference, spouting hateful remarks against Kota. In reality, she totally wants to be a Vaporeon and slip into his Pokeball. Swiftly, Yuna interrupts her musings before YouTube figures out what that means, by shoving Ayano's dish in his mouth. Kota gets amazed by the taste and compliments her cooking. In response, Ayano abruptly turns around to hide her grin and reddening cheeks. Wink. During dinner, Yuna asks if Ayano still writes her novels, causing Kota to panic over the touchy subject. At the mere age of 16, Ayano's books are already on the bestseller list. She's basically the J.K. Rowling of Japan, who is only able to maintain anonymity by using a pen name. But Ayano is about to become a celebrity soon, as she's scheduled to appear on a talk show and a public autograph session. Alas, she also reveals that her mother will attend the same talk show, given that she's also a famous novelist. Her mother had abandoned Ayano years ago and had never reached out to her since. Apparently, that's the reason why Ayano started writing novels in the first place, in order to understand why her mother left and abandoned her family. But we're not here to listen to her sob story, are we? We're here for culture, so Yuna fast-tracks over Ayano's story and proposes that she should sleep over at their place. Kota tries to act as a YouTube moderator and intervene, but Yuna swiftly tells him to shut his face. It's nearly midnight, but Kota finds himself unable to fall asleep, still feeling uneasy about Ayano being in the room next door. Just then, he hears a creepy noise from just outside his room. Slowly, his bedroom door creaks open, so Kota quickly shuts his eyes to pretend he's asleep. Despite his eyes being closed, Kota hears Ayano's thoughts out loud and realizes it's her sneaking into his bedroom. She quietly settles beside Kota on his bed, her thoughts drifting towards the idea of kissing him. As she leans in, Yuna suddenly shouts from her bedroom, calling out for Ayano. Her voice grows louder as she approaches Kota's room, sending Ayano into a panic as she scrambles to come up with an excuse for being there. Kota also panics, fearing that his sister will accuse him of inviting Ayano over to his room. The door bursts open. Yuna sees nothing but Kota's blanket, so she exits the room. Meanwhile, Ayano and Kota find themselves locked in a gaze beneath the blanket. After a brief moment of silence, Kota comes up with an explanation for how she might have ended up in his room, trying to spare her embarrassment. Ayano nods her head, pretending he's right about her presence. But then, she mentions there's something else she needs to tell him. Kota gets a flashback of his life, thinking it's all about to end for him. However, Ayano apologizes for leaving without saying goodbye all those years ago. Kota remains silent, unsure of how to respond. Met with his silence, Ayano worries she may have upset him. Kota suddenly gets a sharp headache again, like the one he previously had when he first gained his mind-reading powers. At his sudden expression of pain, Ayano worriedly touches his cheek and asks if he's all right. Before he can reply, though, the sheets suddenly come undone, exposing the two of them in plain view before Yuna. Using her investigative powers, Sherlock quickly pieces together how the two ended up in this situation. Satisfied with her thesis, she drags Ayano out of the room while calling Kota a freak. The following morning, Kota accompanies Ayano out the door. She apparently lives right next door, adding another trope to the manga, where the protagonist's cute childhood friend moves in next door. Because why not just make it a buffet of cliches? Anyways, Kota makes another visit to his cat therapist that day. She's been delving deeper into the manual and makes an unsettling revelation. When someone of the opposite gender experiences negative emotions around him, Kota will suffer from a headache. Finally, Kota realizes why he's had the recurring headaches in the past. But to make matters worse, the cat girl reveals that if the headaches persist and worsen, he'll eventually die. She also informs him that she has a magical crystal ball, which lets her observe him and hear what he says. So she cautions him against partaking in any teenage activities that might get this channel demonetized. The next day, Kota decides to leave for school early in an attempt to avoid another encounter with Ayano. However, just as he steps out of his home, Ayano emerges from hers, as if she's been waiting all along. She nearly stumbles but manages to recover gracefully. She films a shampoo commercial before greeting him. Later, they ride the subway together in an awkward silence. Except it's not so silent for Kota, who can still hear Ayano's thoughts. Just then, Mizuki appears to confuse Kota's orientation some more. Mizuki leans in close to Kota's ear and asks if he's getting along better with Ayano now. In a state of confusion, Kota backs off and informs him that things remain the same. Then, the train gets a little too crowded, forcing Mizuki's hands to come into contact with the sausage and eggs. Mizuki falls silent, clearly amazed by Kota's breakfast special. In response, Kota attempts to ease the tension by remarking that the width and girth of the longanisa isn't all that special. Surprised, Mizuki apologizes, thinking he must have voiced his thoughts out loud. After a brief moment, Kota finally realizes that it was Mizuki's thoughts he heard aloud, which means Bruce Jenner was in fact Caitlyn Jenner all along. See, I told you guys this isn't a BL manga. Anyways, Mizuki thinks to herself that she ought to be more careful, otherwise she might accidentally slip the fact that she's not actually a boy. So Mizuki scooches a little closer to Kota in order to showcase her own breakfast special against Kota's legs. Obviously, Kota is fully aware that the lumpy sensation on his thighs is from Mizuki's finger in her pocket, desperately trying to convince him that it's not a finger, but an appendage that belongs elsewhere. Later during gym class, Kota is paired up with Mizuki as stretching partners. Internally, Mizuki is still reflecting on the train incident, relieved about safeguarding her secret identity while marveling at Kota's obliviousness. On the other hand, Kota wonders why Mizuki would lie about her gender. He gets so lost in his own thoughts that he doesn't realize his trembling hands are tickling Mizuki's back. Mizuki shyly turns around and looks at Kota like a helpless little girl. Kota narrowly stops Cupid's arrow from striking his heart, but his tribulations are far from over yet. While he decides not to confront Mizuki about her identity, another incident puts him to the test. This time, Mizuki gets injured, requiring someone to give her a piggyback ride to the nurse's office. Kota volunteers as tribute. Out of the pure goodness of his heart, he safely shuttles Mizuki to the nurse's office, still pretending to be oblivious about her identity. Once again, Mizuki gets relieved at Kota's ignorance, not realizing that he in fact actually didn't feel a thing while giving her a piggyback. Anyways, Kota soon leaves for class while Mizuki starts changing back into her uniform. But incidentally, Kota finds Mizuki's necktie of opportunity in the hallway, so he goes back to the office to return it to its rightful owner. Being a top G, Kota doesn't bother knocking and just slides open the door. Lo and behold, the necktie of opportunity delivers fortune to its finder as promised. Everything comes to a standstill. There is nothing but the quietly buzzing sound of the cheap fluorescent lights. Silently, Mizuki grabs the blanket of shame to censor what little there is to hide. She imagines having to out herself on the cover of Vanity Fair, but just then, Kota's Japanese spidey senses kick in once more to save the day. He swiftly asks how much Mizuki can bench with those impressive muscles of hers. Unable to believe her luck, Mizuki goes along with the flow, claiming her 1-rep max is over 3 plates. She challenges him to spot her, insisting on proving it right then and there. However, Kota runs away before YouTube's algorithm gets confused and categorizes this video alongside workout videos. The following day, Kota has a dream about the incident again. Having just washed his sheets yesterday, Kota screams awake to stop his poached eggs from causing a mess. His little sister Yuna bursts in the door, ready to save his life if need be. But it's too late. Yuna sits on top of Kota's crusty blanket, confessing that they're going to need to get some more Tide Pods. After cleaning up the slimy mess, Kota receives an unexpected call from Mizuki. The two have never met on a weekend, yet Mizuki surprisingly asks if he wants to meet up and grab something to eat. While unsure of her exact motive, Kota agrees to see her. Kota arrives a little early in front of their meeting place, Mr. Beast Burger, so he can clarify some details about his powers to us. First of all, his ability is influenced by range and obstacles, much like our regular hearing through our ears. However, it works a little differently when it comes to loudness. The loudness of his mind-reading powers is proportional to one's feelings, meaning that the more intense one's feeling is, the louder their thoughts register with Kota. Okay, you can come now, Mizuki. As usual, Kota and Mizuki engage in a typical conversation while checking out pedestrians. Mizuki points out a girl wearing stockings, knowing Kota is a teeth clencher for a pair of good stockings. As Kota gets embarrassed, realizing he's revealed too much about himself when he still thought Mizuki was a boy, in comes a fly of rationalization, buzzing right into Mizuki's hoodie. Kota's Japanese spidey senses kick into overdrive. He takes a moment to feel around, I mean, feel proud of himself, having just saved his friend's life from a vicious fly. He readies himself to respond to Mizuki's heartfelt thanks that with great power comes great responsibility. However, Mizuki doesn't say a word. Kota realizes he's gotten himself into a grave predicament and must think quickly to resolve the situation. He squeezes his hand tightly for some inspiration, but nothing comes to mind at first. However, he eventually gets the brilliant idea of letting Mizuki go and smoothly returns to enjoying his burger while leaving Mizuki traumatized. Suddenly, their school teacher shows up at Mr. Beast Burger, breaking the tension. Kota's ability reveals the sensei referring to Mizuki as Lady Mizuki in her thoughts, adding further to the mystery of Mizuki's true identity. He considers the possibility that the teacher might actually be Mizuki's maid, or perhaps her personal trainer at the gym. While Kota gets lost in his thoughts, the teacher whispers in Mizuki's ear, accusing Kota of being a goddamn liar and that he's fully aware of her true identity. But the teacher's true motive is also not as it seems. It turns out that she's a total Yandere for Mizuki. Her plan is to expose Mizuki's secret and have her transferred to a girls-only high school, where students have to be accompanied by their maid at all times. The teacher drools at the prospect of spending every moment with Mizuki, where she can sniff the sweat seeping from her scalp all day long. Immediately, the teacher offers to take Mizuki to the school's transfer office. Her manipulation tactic seems to have worked, as Mizuki agrees to go along with the teacher, believing Kota has indeed uncovered her real identity. With a heavy heart, she waves her final goodbye to Kota. But in a last-ditch effort to derail the teacher's plans, Kota quickly suggests pooing together in the bathroom for one last epic time. A bright and cheery Mizuki excuses herself from the teacher, believing Kota remains oblivious to her identity. When they emerge from the loo feeling lighter than before, they discover that the teacher is long gone, having had her sinister plans foiled by Spider-Man. Afterwards, Kota and Mizuki go outside for a walk, where Mizuki once again expresses her gratitude to Kota for saving her life from the savage fly. Finally, the moment he's been waiting for. Calmly yet boldly, Kota proclaims there's no need for gratitude, for with great power comes great responsibility. Later, Kota arrives home, but the day isn't over yet. This time, the kitty he rescued from Truck-kun shows up with a depressed look on its face, perhaps to foreshadow an impending ominous event. He also notices a car parked in front of Ayano's house, and a dank-looking middle-aged woman pacing back and forth. Kota approaches her, recognizing that it's Ayano's mother. She greets him cheerfully, in a way she's never greeted her own daughter. Kota asks if she's come to see Ayano, but the mother denies it. He urges the woman to meet her own daughter. However, with a look on her face that makes you think she is the victim, Ayano's mom says that's not possible, and she drives off in her Mitsubishi Lancer, leaving Kota and the kitty, who is still looking depressed. Next, Kota heads to the cat girl's abode to drop off the miserable kitty. There, the cat girl informs him that she's read through the manual some more and found out one other thing about his ability. She reveals that Kota will see Japanese numbers appear before him when a girl is about to make a confession to him. It'll be a 10-second countdown to serve as an early warning of his demise. While Kota brushes it off, claiming that he's not popular enough to have to worry about receiving confessions, the cat girl still warns him to be vigilant. When Kota returns home, he is unexpectedly greeted by Ayano, and oh my god, she's wearing a pair of Lululemons. Kota clenches his teeth, fighting the demonetizing urge to lunge after those spandex fabrics and shred them to pieces. But the moment is thankfully interrupted by Yuna, who heroically announces that dinner is ready. The real reason why Ayano showed up is to personally invite Kota to her autograph session, but she's yet built up the courage to say it out loud, so she films a mukbang instead. Even after dinner, Ayano's embarrassment still prevents her from bringing it up to Kota. Seeing her struggle, Yuna comes to the rescue once again by asking the two to go buy some snacks for her. All the way to the convenience store, Ayano rehearses the words in her head to extend an invitation to Kota, but they remain trapped at the tip of her tongue. Having heard Ayano's internal struggle for hours, Kota's patience finally runs out. He briefly considers stepping off the bridge but is interrupted by Ayano. We get some backstory about Kota's childhood, but let's just gloss over this filler chapter. Long story short, Kota used to have a matching necklace with his sister Yuna. She lost hers over the very bridge they were standing on. Kota couldn't find it and gave up eventually, but Ayano spent the night and eventually found the necklace for Yuna. As memories of their childhood and her kindness flood his mind, Kota decides to ask if he can attend her upcoming autograph session instead of waiting for Ayano to invite him. Having watched everything through her crystal ball, the cat girl becomes furious with Kota. She asks why he's ignored her advice, despite her clear warnings for Kota to be more vigilant and distance himself from Ayano. He apologizes while blaming those tight Lululemons. He simply couldn't resist their alluring call and the elasticity of those black fibers. The cat girl has no idea what he's saying but warns him once again on his recklessness, emphasizing that the consequences will be dire. The next day, Ayano leaves her home precisely the moment that Kota leaves his house. But this time, he is accompanied by Yuna. Ayano remarks on the coincidence of their meeting, but it doesn't take Kota's special powers to see through exactly what Ayano is up to. Anyways, the three walk peacefully until Ayano accidentally drops her red notebook. Kota picks it up for her, but Ayano snatches the book away from his dirty hands, showing no appreciation for his help. After that awkward moment, they arrive at school in silence and part ways from each other. There, in front of his locker, Kota finds a picture of Mizuki. Speaking of the devil, Mizuki appears behind Kota to surprise him, so Kota shows her the photo he's found of her. Creeped out, Mizuki insists he keeps the photo of her and shoves it in his pocket. Kota begs for her to stop before his breakfast special gets elongated. Mizuki relents, sparing him from the embarrassment, and before this video gets categorized with other cooking videos on YouTube. Once school ends, Kota decides to head to Ayano's signing session early. While bidding farewell to Mizuki, he notices her reading Ayano's novel. Mizuki remarks on how interesting the novel is and that the writer seems to have a similar style to Kaido Ichika. Of course, Mizuki isn't aware of the fact that Ayano is the author and that her mother is Kaido Ichika. Mizuki also points out the peculiar fact that the author's name can be rearranged to spell Kota's first and last name. Wait a minute. Secret diary? An anagrammatic name? Holy sh! Ayano is Voldemort! Okay, sorry I'm writing this at 3 a.m., so I'm not in the right state of mind. Anyways, Kota leaves the classroom but soon receives a call from Ayano. Puzzled, as she's never called him before, he nervously picks up the phone. It's not Ayano on the other end of the line, but her editor, the same person who was with Ayano's mother the other day. In a panicked voice, the editor explains that Ayano has lost her diary, and without it she refuses to appear on the talk show. She suspects that the diary might have gotten lost on the way to the filming studio, and the editor wants Kota to find it, because Ayano is losing her shit over it. Kota assures the editor not to worry and dons his Spider-Man suit. He takes off to find her Horcrux, her diary, but it's nowhere to be found. Kota tries to harness his hearing powers, but there's too many voices speaking simultaneously. Determined, he refocuses his efforts and finally manages to pick up a voice mentioning a red notebook. He sprints in the direction and discovers it in the hands of the sadistic teacher. Kota politely asks if he can get the diary from her so he can return it to its rightful owner. But the teacher denies his request, claiming that she can't just hand over another student's lost diary at his word. And for the first time in this manga, I agree with her. Despite her questionable morals in other matters,